One of the things that I've always appreciated about Ted for the last 8 years is that when something is happening, he will just tell you true what it is. That means that he's not a good politician, because politicians are going to tell you what you want to hear. Ted is the statesman who will tell you what is happening. And in this day and in this era, we need more statesmen and fewer politicians. I'm a politician too. We got people running for office. I'm not trying to down all that, but we need folks who will just tell you straight, and that's Ted. The second thing that Ted is E, and that is he is the enforcer. Now, Commissioner's Court on a 3-2 vote, and to be clear, I was on the 2 side of this vote, took $9 million out of Ted's budget. He had this thing called a rollover account. You would call it at home your savings account. And our county judge, who I don't think she actually ran her own personal budget or anything for him, basically said since there was $9 million sitting in Ted's account that he had squirreled it away and he wasn't using it. Now, this is a Katy business organization. I think that most of you understand that if you take all of the money that's on your savings account on the 31st of the month, just before the 1st of the month, which is the very next day where your rent is due, that you'll have a hard time making the rent if all of the money that's in your savings account is taken the day before. Some folks in Commissioner's Court have a hard time understanding that if we pulled $9 million out of their savings account, it's going to impact them. He has been impacted, and yet he is still enforcing. He has found a way to keep us safe, but he needs more help. And then the last thing, D, he's our defender. When the chips are down, call his office. He will have someone in his office there. And his officers are willing to pay the full price for our freedom. He's had to bury one of our own, just this last year. And so I give to you a law enforcement officer, bar none. I give to you our Constable of Harris County Precinct 5. I give to you Ted, true, an enforcer, and a defender of who we are. Ted.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just because, and yes, thank you. I'm not sick. I'm just getting over some laryngitis. So believe it or not, I didn't have a voice for 3 days. I know that's hard to believe, but all right.
I should be on already.
There we go. All right, thank you. Commissioner, thank you. And as what I would like to do this morning is just spend a little bit of time, first of all, telling you very briefly about Precinct 5. You can go on, of course, you sat here and looked how to do your V code, but you can go on to constablepct5.com and find out more than you want to know about the department. But I think it's important to let you know, first of all, how many people here have a business in Harris County? How about Fort Bend County?
I'm trying to think where my business is.
Okay, all right. I'm speaking to everybody because as Harris County goes, Fort Bend County follows. So if you're not experiencing this, you're going to experience it. And as the commissioner said, I hope that today, I'm going to tell you, like I said, a little bit about the department, but then I'm going to kind of fill you in on what's going on in Harris County from a law enforcement perspective. From somebody who has 39 years in law enforcement, who started in this department as a deputy, who was married for 39 years, who raised my children on a cop's salary, who had to work the extra jobs, who's been in every position and every rank, working every shift, including triple split shifts. And God has blessed me to be where I am today. Your video, your intro was amazing. There's not a whole lot of people other than probably those sitting in this room who understand that link between what we do for a living and our faith. And in law enforcement, I've always said that this is a vocation, this is a calling. You don't do it because of the pay, you don't do it because of the great days off and having to work on the holidays and be away from your family. You do it because you think you can make a difference in the community that you serve. And whether or not it is, God has blessed me in my own faith life, and through my attending the University of St. Thomas, St. Mary School, Seminary, you know, I had to learn very quickly what the Greek word diakonia meant. Okay, the Greek word for service. And the reality is that service in my faith life is not a whole lot of different when I put on this uniform. People ask me all the time, how can you manage both of those things? And my answer is, why? Why is it so difficult? If I cannot look myself in the mirror in the morning when I put on this uniform and like who I see, I will never, never be a good cop, period. I have to be a good person before I can be a good cop. And that's what we try to instill in all these young officers. This is not a power play. This is not about a little Napoleonic complex that some people may have. This is about serving. And with service comes sacrifice. So with that is very quickly, Precinct 5. Your largest constable's precinct population-wise in the United States of America. Precinct 4, Constable Mark Herman, north of us, has more manpower and larger geographic area. Precinct 5 has 1.3 million people in it. It's huge, huge, very diverse precinct. In saying that, we have well over 400 officers who are on the streets. That's officers that are on the streets. The constables here in Harris County are totally different than you're going to find them anywhere else in the 254 different precincts, Commissioner. I'm not precincts, the different counties in Harris County. Totally different. In Harris County, we play a very intricate part in the total look of law enforcement. Almost 500,000 calls for service last year by my precinct alone. The men and women out there in uniform. Over 50,000 civil papers being served annually. All of the things that are mandated to us by the courts. We secure all of the parks within our particular precinct. We also have the toll road responsibility. Anything that's within the precinct, from 290 all the way to 59, all of the HOV managed lanes on I-10, the West Park Toll Road, just about all of it falls within Precinct 5. So there's an awful lot of responsibility that falls on the shoulders of those men and women who wear this uniform. In doing that, my job, or at least the way I see my job, is to give them the equipment that they need, give them the training that they need, and give them the leadership that they need. And most of the time, leadership means giving them first two, then bringing a little bit of wisdom from making my own mistakes and getting out of the way and allowing them to do what they feel that they have been called to do. And right now, that's the challenge that we have. I hope I don't make anybody upset, but as the commissioner said, I kind of call things the way they are. And I'm to the point in my career to where I don't have anything to lose. But you have a lot to lose. As a business owner here in Harris County or in Fort Bend County, you have a lot to lose. In 39 years, I have never seen what I am seeing now. Never. Never. And it scares the living daylights out of me to go and swear in these 23 and 24-year-old officers. It scares me to death. I have grandchildren of my own. They live right here in Katy, no more than a mile from where I am now. I live less than half a mile from where we are now. My station is less than half a mile from where we are now. And it scares me to death what I see happen. I want more than anything in the world to be able to, I'm not narcissistic enough to know that there's not somebody better coming after me that's going to take over this role as constable. My job is to make this the best place I can until I'm called to the next ministry within my life. But in doing that, we have to be able to lay that foundation. And sometimes that means nothing short of fighting. And that's where we find ourselves in Harris County right now. Because we find ourselves in a fight. You hear all the time that things that are coming across the media, you hear the way things that people want you to hear, like transparency, like best practices, like equity, You hear all of these things, but you're not hearing the truth. You're not hearing the truth. As the commissioner said, the truth is 8.7 million, that's a conservative look at it, was taken from my budget. I heard Commissioner Garcia say, why should they be able to squirrel that money away? It's taxpayers' money and keep it on a shelf. Well, first of all, I'm very fiscally conservative and very prudent with your money because it's surely not my money. But what it does allow me to do is to spend $13 million since we started this rollover fund on training, on bulletproof vests, on patrol cars, on tasers, on all of these things to where I don't need to go back to the taxpayer. I don't need to go back to Commissioner's Court and ask the taxpayers for more money. They approve and they give me a budget. My responsibility is to manage that budget. As a duly elected official, that's my responsibility. If I stink at it, don't put me back in office and put somebody else who can manage it better. But if I have that money there, what that allows me to do is to not come back and ask you for more. It allows me to use that to the residents of Precinct 5 to the best of my ability. And I was always raised saying that was a good thing. You're given something, you manage it. But this court is not willing to allow that to happen. You hear all the time from people on the court talk about, we have increased law enforcement's budget for the last 7 years straight. That's a lie. Call it what you want, it's a lie. Now, we can parse words. We can say the words are this, that yes, my budget may have increased $500,000 or may have increased $300,000. That's true. But what are we being deceitful? Let's talk about transparency. Transparency is that we have received no more funding for boots on the ground, other than additional contracts that we've acquired. The truth is that the increase in the budget is because of increase in benefits, okay? It costs more to insure people. It costs more to have their retirement plan. The cost of living increases that the officers get occasionally. That's how our budget is increasing. It's true, it's increasing, but it's deceiving you if I make it sound like what we're doing is investing our money into boots on the ground to make a difference and to make your neighborhood safer. Because that's not happening. It's not happening. But we get to throw those talking points out there. You know, the precinct is a very diverse precinct. Whether or not you're talking about Meyerland and Precinct 5, Meyerland and Maplewood is totally different from Sharpstown, which is totally different from Cy-Fair, which is totally different from Katy, and everything in between. It's a very, very, very diverse precinct. And I wanted to share with you just the challenges when we talk about micromanaging these officials that you have elected. Because some of the things that are going on when we talk about what started out as misdemeanor bond reform is now felony bond reform. When we have to, as the commissioner said, I don't ever want to. I've had to present 2 flags in the last 2 years. The first from an officer who died of COVID, the second one who was brutally murdered with 17 rounds through his front windshield. I don't want to do that anymore. And the only way that we can change that is by not supporting our officers. I'm going to tell you right now, every man and woman in uniform knows that 98% of the people out there support them. But it's the 2% that are the loudest. And they're the ones out there who are convincing others of what's going on and trying to taint what is going on. And the truth here is that in law enforcement, this bond reform has been a nightmare. The law states that everybody, with the exception of 1 or 2 things, should be able to post bond. That's true. But I'm not kidding you when I tell you that our officers will file charges, if they can get charges accepted, first of all, that they'll file charges and that suspect will be out before we can finish our paperwork. That is the truth. And the recidivism The same people that we're dealing with time and time and time again. The reality is that right now, you say that, we always say, criminals don't know where boundaries are. They don't know the difference between Precinct 5, Precinct 4, Fort Bend County. They don't know where the county line is. Well, they do. They do. Because they don't pull this baloney in Montgomery County. But they'll do it here. They'll do it here because there's no consequences for your actions. And that is what has happened, is through our judicial system, through the judges, through the magistrates which are appointed, and these bonds of no effect whatsoever. Remember, you're only required to post 10%, and that's when they follow the rules, 10% of a bond. So a $150,000 bond, you know, okay, it doesn't take much for somebody to come up with $15,000. See, the difference was that back a long time ago, bonds were set not to keep people in jail, but bonds are set to hold people accountable, to get them to come back to the legal system, to be able to put them in front of a judge and a jury that serves everybody. But it used to be that when somebody had to post a bond, they may not have had that money in their pocket, but guess what? Their parents helped them out. Their relatives helped them out. Their bosses helped them out. Their faith community helped them out. And when you do that, everybody has a piece of that pie. Everybody has some sweat in the game. So when it came back to Ted showing up for court in 3 months, I had people within my faith community, I had people within my family who said, no, you're going to go. You're going to be accountable for what you did or for what you didn't do. But this is the way the system works. But right now, when you when you give somebody a PR bond, or you give them a $100 bond, there's nobody in the family, there's nobody in the faith community, there's nobody in the secular job market that's invested in this whatsoever. They come up with $100 out of their pocket, and they walk, and they don't come back. A bad day used to be any day in the court system. If you've ever been to jury duty, you know what it's like. You sit down there, and you may sit down there for 6-8 hours to have them come and say, oh, well, there's no need for a jury today, okay? Because they all plead out at the last minute but the problem now is, it used to be that if 4 to 5% of the defendants no-showed, was a bad day. Meaning that they had a trial set, and they said, we're not coming. They're either on the run or whatever the case may be. You know what it is now? Right around 50%. They don't show up to court. And what happens? The judges turn around and say, well, you know, but they're not a bad guy, and they may not be a bad guy. But the system is that we get our opportunity to present the facts of the case in front of a judge. And when somebody doesn't follow that and decides that I have no consequences, I'm just going to go back on the streets, and in the most cases, all you have to do is follow the news, you'll see how these are the people that are committing the crime time and time again. That's the challenge that we face in law enforcement. It just seems to be that there's no end to it. We just continue to fight this. You know, it was said, and it's the truth, I'm not a politician. I have to be elected to be in this position, but I'm not a politician. And politics has no place in law enforcement. In 39 years, I've never once in my life, never once, knocked on somebody's door and said, show me your voter registration card before I help you. Never. So why do we put politics in law enforcement? Why? Right now, everybody wants to support law enforcement, and I'm thankful for that. But if it's just words, if it's a facade because it's election time, that's where we run into the problem. And that's what we need to be very much aware of as business owners, as citizens, as parents, as grandparents who live in this Katy area. As it said from the beginning, you know, this is not about what you're selling as far as a product. It's about what you're selling as yourself. Because you're talking to people. People They respect you. And what happens is that we need to be, in my opinion, we need to be the ones who are able to get out there and to get this word out to everybody. We need to hold our elected officials accountable, including myself. And whether or not, how we do that, I don't have all the answers. But we have to do something. We just now are in the process of putting together something we call the Watch. What is the Watch? The Watch is faith leaders, Bishop Murray, Pastor Dave Welch, there's and all kind of community leaders, business leaders, people from the district attorney's office, people from the judicial system. And we're trying to get these people together to say, you know, enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. So we're going to hold people accountable. And if it means us posting a picture of somebody who says, this is the person who's letting these people out. Now can't be vindictive. It doesn't have anything to do. I personally don't believe law enforcement or judges should have D's or R's after their name when it comes to a ballot. Okay, but that's my opinion. It ought to be about how you perform your job, and believe me, people will be able to make that decision on whether or not you represent their values very, very quickly. But we haven't done that. We've separated ourselves so much by D's and R's. We talk about a 3-2 court. Does anybody have any clue what's going to happen? And I don't mean that offensively, but I'm just saying, what's going to happen if we end up with a 4-1 court?
They can raise your taxes.
Every year. They can raise your taxes. If it wasn't for Commissioner Cagle and Commissioner Raddick not showing up, they would have done it last year. But that was the only way that they could defend against this 3-2 vote. Because we're not talking about the way it was when I grew up. Like I said, almost 40 years. I was here when the court had the same makeup as it does now. But that was Jim Fontino. That was El Franco Lee. That was Squatty Lyons. Those were different people because they cared about the whole county as a whole. And they knew they could sit there and say that Jack Cagle knows his precinct best, so we will allow him to make decisions based on his precinct. But it's not like that anymore. This is taking a much larger picture at each and every one of our expenses. And if we don't stand up now and do something, then you're not going to have the opportunity to stand up again. We have to be able to join together and say, this is not what we are looking for as Christian men and women in a community that we live in, where we want to raise our children, we want to, people should be able to have their children go to school. I know we have, Victor's running for the school board here. We have, people who are running for Congress. We have people who are running for the sheriff and everything. These are so very important because my children are grown. But I know my grandchildren who are in the Katy school district here, that they should be able to go to school without having drugs sold to them. That my daughter-in-law, my wife, my son, anybody should be able to go up here to the Randalls or the HEB without being accosted by somebody in the parking lot. That you should be able to work hard, whatever that business is, because your money is because of your labor. And you should be able to not have to worry about somebody going into your garage and stealing your stuff out of your garage. Oh, it's only $1,000 worth of bikes or lawnmowers or whatever. Those aren't even investigated anymore. Call in on the phone and get a case number. Report it to your insurance, because that's all that's going to be done. We don't even look at property crime anymore. But all we're doing is perpetuating that type of behavior, which ends up escalating into issues to where I'm presenting a flag. And we cannot allow that to continue to happen. So we have to be able, one of the things I wanted to be able to do, I've got all kind of stuff to talk about, but the reality is that each and every one of you as business owners, as residents of Harris and Fort Bend County on the west side of town here, you're living this life. I mean, I don't know if you had any clue at all, but the second, I'm going to say worst place according to the Drug Enforcement Agency for fentanyl, now this was 2 years ago, was Mason and I-10. You wanna know how many funerals I personally attended? Was 2. I think we had 8 or 9 people under the age of 25 who died of fentanyl overdoses in the last, this was not last year, this was the previous year. Some dying with the needle still stuck in their arm. They don't even get the needle out of their arm. And that's because we have the little chemists, drug dealers who are mixing it, who don't know what they're doing, and of course they mix it to save themselves a buck on the heroin, and the next thing you know, this kid is shooting up 2 years out of Taylor High School, 2 years out of Katy High School, 2 years out of Cy-Fair, and this is what's happening. We have to hold people accountable, if not for any other reason, for their own safety. We have to be able to turn people around with the love that each of us have in our hearts, with the desire. People say, you know, okay, you talk about the vagrants, you know, on the sides of the roads and all this stuff. 80% of them are addicts, 80%. Now we can sit here and talk about, you know, I have a 26-year-old son who's special needs. I know what it's like to care for somebody for the rest of my life. I don't have the retirement that y'all have, or that maybe you don't have. But I'm just saying that my life is different. I will always have a responsibility because my son will always live with us. But the truth is, so it's not a lack of compassion. It is compassion to be able to try to get people the help that they need to turn their lives around. And we have success stories. We have veterans that we were able to reunite with their families, and these officers, I'm telling you personally, have paid for hotel rooms, have actually gotten together and paid for a bus fare for this man to get back to his mother who's in Dallas. So there are success stories, and that's great. But we have to stop perpetuating this problem. We have to get people the help that they need. You know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's mental illness. You can't deal with mental illness. It's drug addiction. You know, I'm not a psychologist, I can't tell you. I'm a cop. But I can tell you that 80% of the people are addicts that we deal with who are homeless. And I would say that probably 40% to 50% have open warrants, which just means that they've been victims of this lifestyle for so long. We have to give them the tools, and then sometimes when people don't know how to use the tools, we have to use the tools to get them back to where they're living a lifestyle that they want to live, a lifestyle not underneath the bridge, a lifestyle that is contributing to society, and that's making the place that we chose to live a place that we want to continue to raise our grandchildren. One of the things I wanted to do was to give you an opportunity to ask me some questions. What is it that you want to know about law enforcement, about Precinct 5? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you touched earlier on this, and I think this is critical for anyone that's going to be in your role or any elected official when it comes to just the protection here. Our biggest problem is you can go out and arrest and do all this stuff, but it's gotten to the point victimhood, or being a victim, even in your jurisdiction, because I've lived in it for years, it's just everyday common, this is what we live in. And when your officers come to arrest, if there's no conviction on the other side, which is the problem, the breakdown between what you're doing and the district attorney, if you can't reconcile that, there is no protection for us. And that is the problem. If you need to step into politics to deal with that head on. And if you can't do that, then you're not the right guy for us. And this is the problem that it's coming down to. We all want to have protection. But at the end of the day, if you just let the criminal go, or, you know, even stats, you may get on things like, you know, the murder rates and stuff, but financial crimes, what, 0.0% of that's convicted? We have so many areas, robbery, theft and stuff, it's just, who cares? Just openly steal, rob, assault, because we can't even take care of the big issues in this county. Even trafficking is just horrible over here. And if you're not here to do the political side of it as well, I think you're great at leading the leadership as far as the constable.
Did you not hear anything political from me right now?
I'm hearing it, but
Thank you.
again, you know, if you can't take on our DA and put pressure there, whether, you know, Jack or Mr. Joe over here, this is a serious issue because, you know, what is the conviction rates in Harris County for most of these crimes is non-existent.
No, you're exactly right. It is. If you've ever heard, I mean, I describe it as a three-legged stool. You have law enforcement, you have the district attorney, and you have the judges. Okay? One of those doesn't stand, the stool falls. Period. You have to have all three of them. You know, you're going to ask the DA is going to say, you know, we don't set the bond. The judges are going to say, we can't discuss these cases. The DA should have asked for a bond hearing. The fingers are always going to point like this.
They all point around a big circle.
Absolutely.
Big circle, and we get hurt in the middle.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. But we need to be able to stand up together. I'm going to tell you right now, our biggest challenge is that you're a business owner. You've got somebody that's moving drugs or whatever the case may be that's sitting in your parking lot. We go up there. I need a complainant. I need somebody to give me the tools that I need to be able to file those charges for criminal trespassing. Will they stay in jail? No. I don't make those choices. But when I go up to somebody, let's just say 27 calls in the Randall's parking lot over here. 27 calls because we've got bird feeders sitting up and stuff where people have pitched tents and everything else, and they want them out of there. All right? I need you to file this affidavit right here. Just sign this thing so my officers can do what they're supposed to do. No, we can't do that. Corporate won't let us do it. Corporate, matter of fact, says you can come into Ulta over there and steal thousands of dollars worth of stuff and walk out, and they won't even file a police report with us. Walk up there, show them we got video camera. Corporate says we don't do that. Okay, well that's fine. Then I can't do it on my end. So as a business owner, you have to be willing to say, as you said, step forward. Let's all step forward together. I don't have a complainant unless I have you as a business owner saying, I want this to stop. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying because our government is we the people. And so if everybody shirks off their responsibility and says, well, this guy's supposed to do it, it doesn't work that way. We all have a responsibility to do our part, and the elected officials work for us. So it's our job to put pressure on the people who aren't doing their job and either get somebody else in there or just, just call them. Just put the pressure on and make them do their job the way they're supposed to do. We can't leave it up to just one other person who's supposed to take care of business.
And it's not easy. You're exactly right. It's not easy though, because when somebody attacks you and attacks your character, then it becomes personal. It hurts. It's the only thing that we have is our character, our dignity, the things that we work so hard for, our reputations. And when somebody comes, do you realize that these officers, we have a hot team, a homeless outreach team, okay? They're to help people. Like I said, great success. When they approach somebody, it's going to be 22 degrees out, or it's going to be 112 degrees out. When they approach somebody, in the summertime, they're told to always have a bottle of water in their hand. In the wintertime, they're always supposed to have a blanket. Why? Because there's somebody with a cell phone sitting on the corner who's recording you, who's going to put it on Facebook, saying that the police are harassing this poor guy. All right? So even if they're going up there saying, sir, can we help you? They've got a bottle of water in their hand. So as it's posted on social media, at least you can say, no, we're there to help somebody. They are there to help somebody. But that's the stuff that is constant as far as the attacks. It starts to break down their will to do anything. You can't do anything about that. But when we all stand together, all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by people who are like-minded, who are thinking the same way. And now I've got the support. You have the support from me. We do. We need to stand together.
Constable, first of all, thank you and to your officers what you do in the public. My father wore the uniform, and sadly, he was one of the officers that gave the ultimate sacrifice. Can you talk a little bit about how we can best support you? I know that HPD has a 100 Club and the union. Can you talk about how we can best support you with the officers in their time of need, and not just when they get the sacrifice, but when that they come across, when they shoot an officer, they lose their secondary privileges. or other situations, and also touch on coffee talk?
The way you can support us is don't get us food. We don't need any more food. No, honestly, the love, as I said, is very evident. Whether or not it is people bringing food up to the station, but we had a project, and Chris, maybe Don was in charge of it. What was our project? What was the name of it? We called our project where people were writing in the letters.
Operation Appreciation.
Operation Appreciation. What happened is that churches, communities, schools, everything. We said make a 30-second video or send a letter in. And what would happen is every morning Don goes through and he posts one of these letters, and it's not, Deputy saying thank you for the time that you did this. It's just an appreciative, we support you, this, that, and the other thing. And people were writing these letters and doing these little videos, kids and stuff, and every morning they would put them on the officers' computers. All the officers sign on. The first thing they do, they get their patrol cars, they sign on, and bam, there's a little video from a little girl who is saying, thank you, we really, this is what I made for you, or whatever. We'll never see her personally, but every day those officers get in there and they're able to say, you know what, the people do support us out there. That's why it's worth going and having somebody spit in your face, or have somebody videotape you and put captions under it that are not true, and things like that. And that's why it's worth fighting against the district attorney and the judges and this commissioner's court, the majority of this commissioner's court.
Thank you for clarifying.
The majority of commissioners. One more, I'm sorry, go.
I want to say something to your question earlier. He stood till 12:30 before Commissioner's Court and was berated like he was a child. He doesn't have the magic dust to change some of this progressive ideology down there, but he is fighting against it. I mean, I was one of the two that was embarrassed because we kept our constables there till 12:30 in the morning.
And we got there at 9 in the morning.
I think you all need to get together with our legislators, pass a law that Harris County is one of the few counties in Texas that you have to report to the DA. Why is that? We need to stop.
Well, it used to be the district attorney was on the same team as us.
Correct, but
Okay,
not anymore.
not so much anymore. We would call and say, hey, how can we bet, hey, this is what you really need. Not anymore. Now if you forgot to dot that I, throw the case out. And sometimes that's the judges. I'm gonna tell you, there's plenty of blame to go around for that,
And last question, just one more.
Would you tell us about the Citizens Police Academy?
Like I said, if you go online, you're going to find out a lot. We have over 25 programs. Every program is free of charge. Whether or not it's the RAD class, Rape Aggressive Defense class for women, for women taught by women. Great class. Okay, we'll come to your place of worship. We'll come to your community. You can come to us. They book up very quickly. Citizens Police Academy, a 10-week program, once a week from 6:30 till 9:30 or 10 or whatever. You get to do everything if you want to, from shoot at the firing range to do a ride-along to my favorite is the scenario night where my wife Jennifer and I get to go up there and role play, shall we say. And after 39 years of marriage, we love to role play. But the truth is that we get to go up there and we get to, we give you scenarios and we expose people to this. But it's it's a great bridge builder between the community and law enforcement. And we learn a lot from it too. It's not to make you think that, hey, cops are all great, because we're far from it. Far from it. But it's to be able to share and to build that bridge and say, this is the challenge that we're all facing as a community. What can we do better in this uniform? Give us something we can do better. Help us to understand, and we will. We'll do that.
My name is Doug Pascal. I'm a state delegate from Precinct 264. You want to make a stand? Contact your precinct chairman, or going to the Harris County GOP.com. You have an opportunity before the 26th of this month to become a state delegate and get politically involved and get this stuff straight. Now, you got to the 26th. The state convention is June 16th at George R. Brown. Be there and you make a voice. You can take a stand and get those sorry judges out of office now.
And if you don't think that this is all calculated, okay? You saw two commissioners' precincts right here juxtaposed with each other. 4 became 3, 3 became 4 for the most part, and at the same time what we did was take Precinct 2, Adrian Garcia, and we took Kingwood away from him so that he wouldn't have to deal with that more conservative base, and he's more secured in his election now. At the same time, how do we make it a 4-1? We go and we try to get another Republican out of office. Okay, Tom Ramsey was just elected down here. We can't do that till 2024. 2022, let's throw him in a precinct to where the people don't know him, where he doesn't have time to adjust, where he has to move thousands of personnel over to be able to serve us, and maybe we can take him out. And then you've got a 4-1. You don't think they're coming after the constables' precincts next? Wait till, if they hold the majority on court, I promise you, by January, they will be redistricting your constables, okay? Now, equity to me means that somebody who's in Precinct 6 with 150,000 residents has the same opportunity to offer their residents what I have an opportunity to offer. To me, it's not a numbers thing. We're not representative of people as far as that. We serve people. That's all we do. Okay, I'm not sitting making laws, and but that's coming. They don't want to do it now because there's too much support for the constables in the 8 different precincts. It would be a death sentence for them politically. But if we allow them to keep a majority, that's what's going to happen next. I'll find myself down in Pearland somewhere, and who knows? They can do whatever they want to do, and they will. They will. He can vote all he wants, and he does. But I've never seen a court that's 3-2 99.9% of the time. 99% of the time. When your county judge makes this comment, well, we don't even need to vote. We can all count. Wow. And the county attorney says, I'm sorry, Judge, you have to vote. That's the mentality, is that we know it's going to be a 3-2. So just be aware of what's going on. We're in the fight for our life, and we're in the fight for our life in the next 6 months.
Thank you.